Good morning. When I joined this church in 1994, I knew nothing about its principles. The church sounded like the progressive church I knew in the Netherlands. During my first visit to the church, I was warmly greeted by Ophelia Lachman, impressed with Minister Judith Meyer, and bonded with Dean Vauquelin, then the president. My red coffee cup assured lots of attention at the coffee hour. I was not thinking about principles that visit. The people I met embodied principles that I was comfortable with. The church's common sense made it a welcome complement to the rather turbulent environment I encountered in primal therapy that I'd come to do from the Netherlands. I was not just warmly welcomed, I felt accepted and included. When I started bringing my partner Jay, who was African American, he too felt included. In no time, I was a member of the personnel committee, thanks to my HR background, and Jay was heading up the coming of age program. We quickly joined Interweave, the group for LGBT members. We didn't have the Q then. Their parents and allies, a vibrant group with regular meetings at the time. Our association with the LGBT community in the church was not our only connection to the church. However, I believe that the principles about equal rights and sexual orientation were the most important principle for us, not just one of several principles. Initially, it became the prism through which we viewed the rest of the church. The way UUSM embraced this principle helped us experience a sense of safety and community that enabled us to thrive in the church. As to LGBT rights, there are always threats to the rights that we have won, and it continues to be important to belong to a supportive church. Let me see. Next. 2 years ago, I joined the Worship Associates program, which has been an inspiring experience for me. It broadened my view of the church and the need to think more deeply about principles. I understand that not having a creed or dogma makes it necessary to have explicit principles that members can agree on. I certainly can agree to the UU principles, as well as to the need to periodically refresh or update them, as the church is currently doing by possibly adding an 8th principle to explicitly include anti-racism and anti-oppression. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. Salam alaikum. Alaikum assalam. And namaste. I offer this flower, this blossom of the lotus to you. Welcome to our service, Liberal Religious Values, our liberal religious values. My name is the Reverend Jeremiah Lal Shahbaz Kalendae, and I serve this historic, progressive congregation as its developmental minister. I am joined in worship this morning by our beloved music director, who is in the back, as well as our many talented musicians and our worship associate this morning, Robbert. We are so thrilled to be joining you. If this is your first time joining us, or if you are new to our congregation, I hope you'll take a moment once you're done with the service and maybe check out our new website, which is really beautiful and has a lot of information about our community and many ways to get involved. We also have a visitors table, which I think is usually set up in the courtyard, but maybe in Forbes Hall this morning, where you can learn more about the church. We begin our service with the lighting of our flaming chalice. Amidst the cold of this season, we kindle a flame of warmth. With the growing darkness, we kindle a flame of light. Before our broken world, we kindle this, our flame of love.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Santa Monica. I'm Robbert, Schalekamp, your worship associate for today. We're delighted to have all of you present with us, wherever you are, here in the sanctuary or in our online sanctuary, from communities across the LA Basin and around the United States, including Gainesville, Florida, and beyond. We are glad you're here. If you're here in person today, we ask that you kindly silence your cell phones during the service. Whether you're new to our community or you've been here for some time, you can find many ways to learn more about our community and become involved on our website, UUSM.org. And if you are here in person, check out the information on our tables outside and talk to volunteers for ways to be involved and learn more about our faith. We offer programs to serve the needs of our congregation and to be of service to the larger world, including broad religious exploration and personal development for people of all ages. We also join with other social justice advocates to work for justice and harmony of our world. This month we'll focus on UNICEF. Unitarian Universalism is not defined by creed or dogma, but is guided by principles that affirm the worth and dignity of every person and encourage an individual search for truth and meaning. We honor the wonder of existence and believe that we are all connected to each other and to the interdependent web of life. Our beliefs are drawn from scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience and ancient tradition. We are an open, affirming and welcoming congregation, diverse in background, identities, spiritualities, and philosophies of life. We are united in our desire to create an inclusive, beloved community to live the principles of our faith and to serve the wider world. Whatever your beliefs or faith tradition, we invite you to help us build a community where, together in our diversity, we may covenant in love and justice. May you find comfort, camaraderie, and inspiration here. As we gather in this space and in our virtual spaces, we recognize that we are connected with one another through the winds that give air to all beings, and through the waters that move deep into the earth and up into the sky, as we saw today. We acknowledge that the ground beneath our feet is and always has been the home of indigenous people, such as the Tongva, many of whom have been forcibly removed to other lands. They remain committed to the stewardship of these lands over centuries, and we are honored and grateful to be here on their traditional lands today. Come, now let us worship together. Announcements. We have a few announcements this morning. Lunches for bunches. Every Sunday, UU members of all ages gather to assemble lunches for our homeless neighbors in Santa Monica. It's one of UUSM's core Faith in Action programs, but funds are running low. Please donate to support the Hunger Fund today. And here's a fun way to do that today. We're having a Hunger Fund pop-up sale today, right after the service at 11:30. Shop for friends, family, or yourself. Purchase holiday ornaments, greeting cards, and gently used jewelry to benefit UUSM's Hunger Funds. Women community gathering today at noon. Join them for a potluck lunch. Bring a dish to share and drop by for a visit. The 4th Sunday of December is Christmas Day, so we are meeting early this month to share friendship and holiday spirit. The Christmas Eve service will be on Saturday, December 24th at 6 p.m. That will be the only service on that day. We will not have a service on Sunday, December 25th, Christmas Day. Please see our website uusm.org or e-newsletter for more details about these and other church events. Please, no, we'll get to that later. There's a special announcement that just came in. This Saturday evening, this coming Saturday evening, our staff singers, Chloe and David, will be performing the Wine and Cheese Messiah. I didn't think of that, stated. At High Waist Performance Space here in Santa Monica. Entrance is by donation, and you may pack your own picnic, even though it's at 7 p.m. in the evening. See Chloe or David for more details after the service. Now, please rise on body or spirit for our opening hymn and remain standing for our covenant and hymn of praise.
Good morning. If you have a donation for the Westside Food Bank, now would be a great time to bring it on up to our basket. We have been in partnership with the Westside Food Bank for many years, helping to provide food for our less fortunate neighbors in the food area. It's a really great idea to bring like pasta sauce, especially if it's not like in a glass jar, large bags of spaghetti, canned goods. You could buy like a whole kind of 12-pack of green beans, things like that. Our neighbors very much appreciate it, and we love being a part of the community in this way. Thank you all for your donations. Today, I'd like to introduce our special friend, Kim Kalmanson, to read our story for all ages.
Good morning. Okay, so today I'm going to tell you a story about a little girl who was searching for a porpoise. Now, as you probably know, a porpoise is a sea mammal in the dolphin family. They're smaller and they're shyer than dolphins. This is actually a dolphin, but I couldn't get a porpoise. They're really more difficult to find, but porpoises are very important.
Kim, I hate to interrupt you, but the topic for today is purpose, finding purpose.
Purpose?
Yes, purpose.
So not porpoises.
No.
Oops. Well, do you mind if I tell my porpoise story anyway? Because it's the only story I have ready for this morning.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So, Amira's porpoise. So, there was once a girl named Amira, and all she wanted for her birthday was a porpoise of her very own. She wished and hoped and dreamed of a porpoise, and she asked her parents and her grandparents, and she told everybody at school she was getting a porpoise for her birthday. But her birthday came and went, and she did not get a porpoise. She was disappointed, and she really wanted some answers. So she asked her parents, and they said, "Oh, Amira, we can't give you a porpoise. This is something you need to seek out for yourself." And Amira looked at her parents kind of funny and said, "You know I said porpoise, right? You know, like the small sea mammal similar to a dolphin." And her parents looked at each other and said, "Well, you can't have a wild animal for your birthday anyway." So she asked her grandparents, and they said, "Oh, Amira, we can't get you a porpoise. You'll have to figure that out on your own when you're older." And sometimes even adults don't know their purpose. And at this point, Amira, she was getting a little annoyed. She said, "I said porpoise, porpoise, the sea mammal that's like a small dolphin." And her grandparents said, "Oh, sorry, we misheard you, but we wouldn't have bought you a porpoise anyway. They belong in the wild, dear." So Amira was fuming. Why had nobody understood her when she said she wanted a porpoise? And now that she thought about it, why were the adults unwilling to give her a purpose either? I mean, what was a purpose anyway? So Amira set about trying to find a purpose. Over the next several years, she asked a lot of people who she knew and trusted. And some of the adults especially says, "I don't know." That's a really hard thing to answer, right? Hard thing to explain. But some people gave her some good advice. They said, "Pay attention to the things that are important to you and see where in the world you think you could use them to make a difference. And you may not have a clear idea about it yet, and your purpose will certainly change over time. But if you think about the things you value and how you can use them for good, you'll be on the right track." So Amira thought about all the things that she valued and cared about. Things like animals and the habitats they live in. And she thought about things she liked to do, like learning new things and teaching those things to younger children. She thought about her heroes, people who were fighting to save habitats and people who were living their lives in ways she wanted to copy. And she thought about what was possible and ways that she could change the world when she was older. And eventually, after some time and work, Amira came up with her purpose. And the funny thing is that Amira's purpose wasn't very far from porpoises. She decided that her purpose was to be a caring advocate for the earth and teach others about conservation. And that's just what she did.
Thank you for that. Purpose is that little flame It's not for kids. That show is not for kids. It's from Avenue Q. Let's sing our youth out to their RE classes.
With conscious breathing, we can find our centeredness and return again to the depths of our spirits. When we abide in our deeper spirits, we remember that we are each other's reflections, and we remember the oneness of all of being. Let us begin by breathing with conscious awareness and feel ourselves, with each breath, returning to the ocean of oneness. Each breath another wave, moving from within ourselves to out beyond ourselves. Each breath drawing in spirit, ruah, from the ocean of being, and then pouring itself back into this shoreless sea. Slowly, we allow ourselves to feel at one with the rhythm of our breath, the pulse of being. From this place of deep centeredness and connection, please join me in this time of mindfulness and prayer. In the spirit of abiding love, we lift our hearts in prayer. We ask for an anointing of a healing balm for all those who are in pain, suffering in body, mind, or spirit. May suffering be eased and peace be found. We summon comfort for those mourning losses and living with the pain of absence. May grief be transformed into enduring memory and love. We pray for compassion for those being born into this world and those departing from it. May the thresholds of life and death be filled with tenderness and care. We hope those living in the narrowness of oppression and limited consciousness will be delivered unto spaciousness and freedom. May the captives be ransomed and the oppressors transformed. We call for peace in the midst of war and fellowship and mutuality where there is discord and violence. May we not learn the ways of war anymore. We seek guidance and wisdom, blessings for our lives' paths, that we may walk them in serenity and in beauty. Let us offer now the prayers of our hearts and hold silence together for meditation. When we are born, we enter into life and the interdependent web of all existence without any sense of a separate self. All was one in our earliest experiences of life. Psychology tells us that our initial response to the world beyond our beings was to understand it as an extension of ourselves. The relationships that our parents or caregivers and families and community provided established the relational bonds that helped to guide us as we grew older and began to experience reality through increased distinctions, dualities, and fragmentation. If we had a positive and nurturing experience in our early lives, we were more likely to have a deeper trust and to bond with the world around us. If we had negative experiences in our early lives, that too would shape how we later process and interact with the world around us. As we grew older, we learned to continually distinguish ourselves from our environments. And we lost most of that early sense of the unity of being, that oneness we initially experienced. With time, our lives continued to provide us with valuable feedback so we could avoid those things which diminished our chances of survival and embrace those which would promote our survival. It is through these dynamic life adaptations that we began to develop a roadmap to navigate an increasingly differentiated, complex, and nuanced world. This guide was developed to serve as our basic moral code, to help us resolve the dissonance of once knowing ourselves to be at one with reality, and then having to deal with the complexity of life and our alienation from that sense of ultimate belonging. Is it any wonder that the source of being is called one in so many of the world's religions, and that the spiritual path in many of these traditions is to follow an ethical code or a reliable system of values that helps us to return to communion with life in the way that we once knew it when we were born? One of the primary reasons people have gathered in religious communities across time is to discern that common roadmap to living, our ethical and moral compass, and to encourage it among ourselves and to promote it as efficacious in the wider world. Each of us are shaped by our life experience. We hopefully cultivate a sense of right and wrong that's then refined throughout our lives by our engagements with community and with the world. The values we operate by on our life's journey are often mostly unconscious to us, unless our conscience is stirred and we reflect with intention and mindfulness upon that substance of our hearts. Community can help us not only to discern and refine these values, but it also can help us to embody them through providing a context in which to practice them, and by providing accountability to ensure their endurance. Now, different communities subscribe to different sets of values, and people tend to settle themselves in communities that reflect their own moral understanding of the world. Our community is undergirded by a framework of moral values that have been discerned over generations, lifetimes of experience in liberal religious community. We call these our liberal religious values. Now, liberals from the Latin root meaning freedom or free from restraint or generous. Religious finds its origin in the Latin root meaning obligation, bond, reverence, or my favorite, to bind back. Value finds its origin in the Latin root meaning valid or possessing worth. Held together, liberal religious values might express worthy qualities that are revered freely or that expand religious freedom. We are a liberal religious community because we are a community of consent. No one has to be a part of the community or would be coerced into belonging with promises of salvation or fears of hellfire. And our beliefs promote religious freedom and allow for the widest possible inclusion of religious thought. There's no one right way in Unitarian Universalism. So our moral values serve as guides in our generous community of freedom and choice, and they uphold those same religious truths. They are part of what makes us who we are as a religious movement. When we remember that religion means to bind back to a tradition or to ultimate source, we might also think of these liberal religious values as being the roadmap that we follow to live in harmony and communion with life itself. Now, in high school, I began the process of trying to discern and articulate my moral values with the help of my friends and religious teachers and my church community. Perhaps you too might recall a time when you had an awakening of conscience, or a time when one of your moral values became very clear to you. In my awakening, one of my values, which I discerned with the help of a dear friend who was a Jain, and this is one of their tradition's core teachings, was the value of ahimsa, which literally means not striking, but which we commonly think of as nonviolence. Growing up in a world where there was so much violence that was normalized, human to human, man to woman, nation to nation, human animal to non-human animal, I realized we could never achieve lasting harmony, peace, and communion with life itself without people, communities, and whole societies making a commitment to nonviolence, to not striking each other in intention, thought, word, or deed. When I adopted this value with seriousness, it began to impact my life in all kinds of ways. I didn't want to purchase clothing anymore that was made by exploited workers in sweatshops. I didn't want to buy household products that would harm the natural world. I didn't want to eat animals or their byproducts, to stop participating in the industrialized violence that brought them to my table. I would volunteer each week then with the anarchist collective Food Not Bombs to prepare vegan meals with donated goods and then serve them in the city square. I recognized the violence being done by our economy and social order to those who were poor or unhoused. Nonviolence as a value blossomed into morals of compassion and justice. Discerning one value was so important to me that it shaped the course of my life as I strove to embody it and found ever new applications for it in my life. Over time, I got clear about more of my values and began to practice them too. It was in my home community and in my activist communities that I found others who had arrived at similar conclusions and were also attempting to practice, putting their values and their love into action. Our shared values are reflected in many places in our congregation. We recite our church covenant each Sunday, and it professes that love is the doctrine of this church. Values are woven through the services we offer, the hymns we sing, and in what we pray. A few years ago, our congregation adopted a covenant of right relations that articulated the values we hold in our relationships with each other and how we address conflict or brokenness in those relationships in healthy ways. It opens with a preamble: as a congregation, we commit to learn and grow together and to develop strong relationships with each other. How are we doing on that commitment? It continues by naming our agreed upon commitments, to be compassionate and loving through our words and deeds, to practice direct and honest communication, to address any harmful impact of our words or deeds as soon as possible, to honor diversity by showing respect in ways that are meaningful not just to ourselves but to others, and by everyone nurturing and attending to the well-being of community. Each of these commitments then provides concrete ways by which we live out each of these values. This covenant, which we adopted as a community before I arrived, is a beautiful testament to some of the liberal religious values of our community. And I hope you'll take the time to be with it mindfully if you haven't read it in a while, or perhaps not at all. No one from on high imposed these value commitments and moral practices upon this congregation. We adopted them ourselves to fortify and strengthen our beloved community. Now you may be wondering, well, what about our 7 UU principles? Aren't those also shared values? Our UU principles reflect our liberal religious values, but they're more concrete and specific than values. For example, ahimsa, or nonviolence, is a value that could be the basis for an articulation of a more specific moral principle, like the proposed First Principle Project, which would like to include all beings in our affirmation of inherent worth and dignity. Our spiritual forebears actually had statements of religious belief. This is a surprise to many. But when the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America consolidated and they abandoned creedal statements of belief and instead adopted these guiding moral principles and our reflected shared values that could be inclusive of many different religious beliefs shared among us. We called our tradition a living tradition because we continually revisit and revise our foundational frameworks of meaning to include new wisdom and new experience. Our principles have actually been changed twice since their first iteration in 1960. The first iteration included 6 principles, which are a bit different than our ones we have today, and no sources. In the early 1980s, a second iteration was adopted with a 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web, and the 5 sources of our tradition were then named. In 1995, the 6th source, earth-based religions, was added. We are now in the midst of another period of discernment in which our 7 UU principles are under review for a 3rd time. In 2020, the year we all remember fondly, we began a national period of discernment to determine if we needed to update and refresh our 7 UU principles. In addition to considering these moral frameworks, the UUA Study Commission was also tasked with considering our purpose statement and sources statement. Our UUA board, this is our national democratically elected governing body, charged our Article 2 Study Commission to, quote, review Article 2 of the bylaws, our principles and purposes, and provide any revisions that will enable the UUA, our member congregations, and our covenanted communities to be relevant and powerful forces for spiritual and moral growth, healing, and justice. Proposed changes should articulate core UU theological values. The board believes that one core theological value shared widely among UUs is, I guess? What was the number one value that UUs love? The commission of appraisal in its report, Engaging Our Theological Diversity, cites Robert Miller's study on Unitarian Universalism, stating, UUs ranked loving as an instrumental value and mature love as a terminal value more highly than did respondents from other groups, religious or non-religious. That's fascinating. We therefore charge this commission to root its work in love as a guide in its work, attending particularly to the ways we and our root traditions of Unitarianism and Universalism have understood and articulated love and how we have acted out of love. A powerful and challenging charge. And I think we should be grateful for those who were willing to take up this critical review process. They've invited input from Unitarian Universalists all around the country and have drafted an initial proposal. And we're going to hear it today. This proposal will be placed on the 2023 General Assembly agenda in Pittsburgh, and it will require a majority vote to continue its consideration for another year. Revising our principles would then require a 3/4 vote, so that's quite a high threshold, the following year at the 2024 General Assembly. If either of those votes fail, either this one coming up in Pittsburgh or the one in 2024, no similar proposals can be considered for another 2 years, and the 7 principles remain as they are with the 6 sources. So the UUA Study Commission has encouraged us to adopt a framework of shared values and covenants rather than the 7 principles, though they do also name 7. Their proposal in its current form reads as follows. Love is the enduring force that holds us together. As Unitarian Universalists in religious community, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist each other in engaging our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom and reason, hope and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love inspires and powers the passion with which we embody our values. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are. Justice. We will work to be a diverse, multicultural, beloved community where all people thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression within ourselves and our institutions. We are accountable to each other for this work. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely share our faith, presence, and resources. Compassionate generosity connects us one to another in relationships of mutuality. Evolution. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Evolution is fundamental to life and our Unitarian Universalist heritages, which are never complete and never perfect. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, theology, and experience. We covenant to learn from one another and openly explore the depth and breadth of our many wisdoms. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain a fully inclusive and accessible community of communities. Interdependence. We honor the sacred interdependent web of all existence. With humility, we understand our place in the web. We covenant to care for and respect the earth and all beings by fostering relationships of mutuality. We work to repair the bonds we have broken. And this ends their proposal. Now, I hope that you'll take more time to learn about the UUA Article 2 study process and get involved if you're not already. This is a work in progress, and it can help us all to think more deeply about our many liberal religious values and principles and how we articulate and embody them together as a liberal religious movement. To our living tradition. Amen and blessed be.
Our practice here at UUSM is to dedicate half of our weekly Sunday offering to support the life of our church, and the other half is used to give to organizations doing work in the world that may be too big for us alone. This month, half of our Sunday offering will go to UNICEF. UNICEF is an arm of the United Nations mandated to advocate for the protection of children's rights, to help meet their basic needs, and to expand their opportunities to reach their full potential. UNICEF is committed to ensuring special protection for the most disadvantaged children, victims of war, disasters, extreme poverty, all forms of violence and exploitation, and those with disabilities. UNICEF responds in emergencies to protect the rights of children in coordination with United Nations partners and humanitarian agencies. UNICEF makes its unique facilities for rapid response available to its partners to relieve the suffering of children and those who provide their care. UNICEF is non-partisan, and its cooperation is free of discrimination. UNICEF aims, through its country programs, to promote the equal rights of women and girls and to support their full participation in the political, social, and economic development of their communities. Some of this commitment can be seen in UNICEF's response to the war in Ukraine. They've provided basic health resources, counseling and feeding children under 2, ensuring people have access to clean water, mental health support, and education services for the millions of internally displaced and refugee children of Ukraine. There are many ways to give. Check out our slide. There it is. Check out our slide. Or the instructions at the end of the order of service for ways to give electronically. Cash or checks in the collection by the ushers or delivered to the office are appreciated too. Thank you so much for all that you give monetarily, and especially all that you give of yourselves to build our community. I invite our ushers to come forward as we will now give and receive this morning's offering.
Please rise. Please rise in body or in spirit for our final hymn. This is 1017, Building a New Way.
May you go in peace. May you hold fast to that which is good. May you return to no person evil for evil. But may you strengthen the faint of heart, support the weak, help the afflicted. May you go into this day and be blessed. And may you be a blessing. Amen.